Hello and welcome. This is an exclusive interview on AD4 TV Radio. I am Tunde Hassan. In Nigeria and across Africa, and indeed the rest of the developing world, there are huge concerns about the extent to which governments at all levels have been able to mainstream communication into policies, programs and projects towards achieving the set objectives. There are gaps often pointed out in terms of the strategic addressing of communication components for development purposes. And this has resulted in some measure of disconnect in terms of the acceptance, understanding and participation of the people in government projects and programs, and of course policies, no matter how well-intentioned, well-designed. When it gets to the point of relating with the public to achieve the purpose set, it collapses like a pack of cards.
The rate of policy, program and project failure across Africa is alarming and remains a subject of discourse. Among other critical reasons said to be responsible for these infractions is the noticeable inadequacies in mainstreaming communication as a strategic component of project conception, design and implementation. The result is the widespread policy somersault and program failure. In some cases, there have been incidents of outright rejection and lack of buy-in by the targeted beneficiaries. Nigeria is not insulated from this trend that predominates sub-Saharan Africa. Efforts of governments through projects and programs often fall apart, unrealized due to lack of consideration for communication components, which experts say is strategic to planning and driving any development process. Public policy affairs specialists insist that public project success is highly dependent on the deployment of strategic communication. These help effective engagement and active buy-in or involvement of stakeholders. Applying strategic communication in public affairs facilitates inclusion and social development by engaging stakeholders and policy makers establish conducive environments. It is further credited with enabling the assessment of risks and opportunities, as well as promoting information exchange to create positive social change via sustainable development. Against the background that trust in government around the world is very low, the strategic communications approach builds trust towards project delivery. Mainstreaming strategic communication into national development processes is the trust on the conversation on exclusive interview with Mr. Simon Obadiah, previously a communication specialist with the World Bank. As a communication specialist and ethicist, Mr. Simon also takes on critical questions of ethics in managing the strategic communications components of public policy, programs and projects. Mr. Simon Obadiah is the guest on exclusive interview.
And that's what we'll be focusing on as I introduce my guest on the program, Mr. Simon Obadiah Tomdet. He is a strategic communication specialist with vast experience across borders, so to speak, having worked in Nigeria and also applied his expertise within international system, being a communication specialist with the World Bank. Mr. Tomdet, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
It's really a pleasure having you here, and I know that moving around to this point has meant developing massive exposure in this area of concern. using communication strategically to drive development.
Okay.
In assessing the situation in Nigeria and across Africa, how do you see what is going on within the continent and within the country?
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to meet you once more and to link up with you again after many years. Let's know that strategic communication is defined actually as a program designed to influence the behavior of stakeholders to achieve specific objectives of a program or project. So, and it's deliberately actually defined in the sense that first is a program itself, the strategic communication, and then it has to influence the voluntary behavior of stakeholders to achieve a project objective or policy objective or program objective. You know, where I'm defining this in relation to government projects. For those of us who worked in international organizations, we can just go straight to project objective. But you know, in government parlance, you design a policy. And then out of the policy, you have a program.
Okay.
And then out of the program, you fish out the projects.
Okay.
And each of them actually need to have communication strategy mainstream into
at
the policy.
Each level of the entire arrangement,
From the
policy to program to project.
absolutely. And then even from on each of them at the conception of the policy or the project or the program, you have to find a communication specialist, you know, on board to be able to listen to whatever they are doing. And then the communication specialist should be part of the policy formulation, part of the decision making, part of the program formulation and implementation, as well as the project. Okay. What you might be asking is that, okay, so does government actually think of that?
Yeah, I was just coming to that. Do you
Yes.
see this is any measure of understanding of this process
That's-
in driving government policies? More so that from your introductory remarks, you talked about voluntary involvement of stakeholders, acceptance of the project to
Absolutely.
as designed.
Yes.
What we've seen through time is, in some cases, outright rejection of government policies and programs in not only in Nigeria, across Africa.
Yes.
Do we see it playing out, mainstreaming of communication component in project design across the continent?
Absolutely. You know, it's a process. Communication itself is a process. So it's not an ad hoc kind of an approach, but it's a process. And when you follow the process, the tendency is for the stakeholders to actually be on board and buy into it. And you know, you have different stakeholders in a policy or in a project or a program. Okay. The tendency is for you to now ignore, you know, these various stakeholders. To be technical, one has to know that in a particular policy or program or project, there are stakeholders. And the stakeholders could be either the primary stakeholders, those people that the policy or the program or the project will impinge on and affect and be of use to directly.
The end users.
Those are the end users, and we call them primary stakeholders. Or, well, in journalistic parlance, it could be audience. Then you have the program after you have put down the policy. And then the problem usually is that if you do not actually engage the stakeholders at the primary level, and then the secondary level. These are people who influence the primary stakeholders to agree with whatever policy or program or project that you have. Okay, so those people could influence.
Either way.
Yeah, they can influence either way. Some of them might also be the primary stakeholders, but then they are secondary in the sense that they can easily talk to those people and then they can accept. For instance, probably in your village, you have a particular project that is coming to your village. When I was working for the bank, there was this program called Fadama Project. And I went, so I saw myself as a primary, even though I was working for the bank. Now I wanted to influence my village people to participate. And because they've had a lot of influence from other projects, probably government projects, they didn't want to participate in the project. They said, oh, we've seen this before. Politicians have come with all kinds of projects. Government people have come with all kinds of projects. They've collected our money and we've not seen anything. Do you know that it took me more than 2 years to convince these people, and I would be there at the table meeting with the villagers, telling them that, look, this is how you should follow so that you will be able to gain from the Fadama project. They didn't agree, even though I was coming from the bank myself. So it takes quite a long time. And those people were the primary stakeholders. So I considered myself as a secondary stakeholder because I can influence them.
That is it.
So it took me time to be able to sensitize them. And virtually they agreed. And of course, the adaptation was in stages also. Some people who agreed actually got the money. And then when those other people saw that they collected the money, they now
brought them in.
So you have primary stakeholders, secondary stakeholders, and then you also have the tertiary stakeholders. And you have to know that that's why you need to be a specialist in that particular area. The tertiary stakeholders are policymakers. Sometimes they are NGOs. Sometimes journalists and media people can also be either tertiary stakeholders or secondary stakeholders. Okay, in that.
Yeah.
So those tertiary stakeholders are people who influence the policies. For instance, if there is a particular thing that people have refused to accept, now, did the legislators go through? Did they set up a policy that will rhyme with the mind of the people? And if there is no policy, the tendency is for the project itself to fail. Because there might be a policy. For instance, if you are starting a health program and then there's no policy, okay, let us say, take the example of the Almajiri system. You know, you can decide to say, okay, we have to make all these Almajiris to go to study Western education. Is there any policy that has been designed to back
strategically, deliberately?
Yes. You or media, you can go and talk to them. But then the tendency is that as far as there's no policy, when you are talking to the parents, they will say, why are you disturbing us? But if there is a policy, then the government can come in and media can come in and all these other influencers can come in. But if there is no policy, the tendency is no matter what you do with communication, it will not succeed. Because those people can get away. You know,
okay. Now, like across Nigeria, across Africa,
yes,
there's a very huge present concern about massive project and policy failure.
Absolutely.
As in your activities, in your vast experience in strategic communication, will it be right to say that this failure can also be laid at the doorstep of the inability or or the inadequacies in mainstreaming communication into this project? Because you see projects, very good projects,
Yeah.
either abandoned midway or outrightly rejected.
Absolutely. Communication plays a large percentage in that. You know, the Project Management Institute actually shows us that the work of a project manager is 90% communication and 10% only the technical supervisory work. But many of them do not actually understand this. In fact, there was a study done in 2003 by the Project Management Institute, which shows that projects fail because of lack of mainstreaming communication into those particular projects. And that a project that is worth $1 billion, you know, you will find that virtually more than 76% can fail if there is no communication mainstream into that particular project. And it was a study done, which means it has been proved scientifically that communication is very, very necessary. And let me come back to your question now. The truth is that most projects fail because of lack of communication. It's not because the technical expertise is not
there.
Yeah, the technical expertise could be there. But because communication was not mainstream and was not mainstream strategically, you know, many people actually see public relations as communication. Okay. Yeah, but strategic communication goes beyond that. In strategic communication, first of all, you have to know that it is a process and it moves in stages. Number one is that, have you in that particular project, are people aware of the project? Number one stage. Number two is that the fact that people are aware doesn't mean that they know, which means you have to go deeper to educate people on that particular project for them to know. And even if they know, what is their attitude to the project, even if they know that is it. For instance, we know that the Almajiri system is not the best system for people, for us to actually get all Nigerians to be educated, to raise the literacy rate. But, you know, the issue is that, of course we know, and we know the implication. We know everything about the need for Western education for those people to be integrated. But how many of us are doing it? So it now comes to the issue of awareness, knowledge, and then attitude formation. Whether it is good or it is bad, that's where the ethics now comes in.
Yes.
So you will find that people will know that, yeah, this thing is not good, but how many of them are doing it?
So attitude is key.
So attitude is key, but then even in the attitude should be positive. The attitude should be
because
positive.
Attitude can also go the other way.
Exactly.
Negative.
So it should be positive. So you need people who actually understand the process of strategic communication. Now, even if the attitude is positive, it doesn't mean that people will take action on that thing.
Acceptance and acting on whatever.
Very good. That's where behavior change comes in.
Beautiful.
So behavior change is the action that you take to make it successful. So you can now see that even in the strategic communication, because it is a process, you have to move the person from the level of awareness
to knowledge,
to the level of knowledge, and then to attitude change, and then behavioral change. If you don't follow those processes, let me tell you, you are beating about the bush.
Now, you can see why we're talking about communication as being a very paramount strategic component of the development process.
Yes.
We'll return to continue this conversation.
Yeah.
I have with me in the studio Mr. Obadiah Tamdet, a strategic communication specialist whose extensive experience in mainstreaming communication as a key component of development has really is as deep and profound. We'll be right back.
As the year is gradually coming to an end, we thank all of our clients across the globe for your unwavering support and patronage. 2021 has been an unprecedented year of success for AD4 Communications Limited, owners and operators of AD4 TV Radio. We wouldn't have made it thus far without our valued clients. May the youth health fill your homes with joy, your hearts with love, and your life with laughter as we look forward to a more fruitful collaboration in 2022. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year.
You're welcome. Exclusive interview on AD4 TV Radio, and we're discussing communication, not just any communication, strategic communication. Beyond that, how to mainstream communication ethically, properly, strategically into the development process. And I have in the studio with me Mr. Obadiah Tamdet. Once again, thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much.
We've talked about policy failures in relation to the presence or absence of communication in the original design and through the process of execution of those projects. Why do you think, beyond the principles of communication and the strategy to deploy, why do you think there is this tremendous amount, this tremendous level of disconnect between the people, the projects done by government, and the thinking of government? Often, state actors have been accused of foisting their thinking and behavior, attitude to whatever project on the people without the involvement of the people. So the issue of inclusion in policy formulation and execution is critical. Why do we have this disconnect?
Sometimes it could be deliberate. Another time it
Deliberate?
Yes. Another time it might be out of ignorance of the importance of mainstreaming communication, and not just communication, but strategic communication. You see, the greatest problem that we have, not just in Nigeria or Africa or even the world, is that everybody thinks he or she knows communication.
And what is good for the man on the street.
And what is also good for the man on the street. But we used to say in development communication, parlance, that if you are sick, then you look for the doctor. Don't just guess the kind of sickness that you have. You might be having neck pain, but it might probably have started from your foot or feet, okay? And then goes up. So the best thing is that if you don't understand, look for the expert in that particular area. That's where we have actually the main problem. I said initially it could be deliberate, in the sense that if we are talking of government now, if government actually does not want inclusion or stakeholder participation, which is very key to the success.
Of course,
of
inclusion is critical.
Absolutely. So sometimes they might not be interested in having members of the public. And it's something in Nigeria, I think it's a hangover of the military. That in those days, the military would just come out and
summarily
just announce.
Summarily.
Yes, exactly. And the present, sometimes civilian regimes pick up from that hangover, and then they still want to bring a particular policy, by what we call design of project by stealth.
Hmm.
So you quietly
Acting by fiat.
yes, fiat or stealth, you steal the thing into the public conscience. You remember recently when government brought out this Karma review,
Hmm.
you saw the furor that took place.
Hmm.
Why was
Almost
it
outright rejection.
outright? It's not that it might be bad, but of course, why are you not interested in people knowing how you did that particular process? But it was deliberately done, as far as I'm concerned. It was deliberately designed and brought out to members of the public, and then you could see the rejection. In projects, for any policy or program or project to succeed, there must be involvement, like I said, stakeholder involvement, stakeholder engagement or stakeholder consultation. And that is why, in most cases, for a policy to be formulated or program or project to be designed, you know, there must be a communication-based assessment, what we call sometimes perception study. Some people call it CAP studies, you know, knowledge, attitude, you know, behavior change and practice or something like that. Some people, it is key. When I was working for the international organization, I insisted that each project that was designed must have a communication-based assessment, a perception study or a survey, on which you will base your design of the communication strategy. Otherwise, you might just be guessing. Why are you designing a project when you actually do not know the mind of the people?
And the truth, I mean, apparently, let me
Yeah.
not say the truth.
Yeah.
It seems a lot of the projects that we churn out
Yeah.
in the developing world
Yes.
are products of guesswork.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's deliberate and sometimes it might be out of ignorance.
Okay, let's take the deliberate angle.
Yes.
That brings a very serious question to the table.
Yeah.
I know you are very strong in terms of principles and
Yeah.
ethics.
Yeah.
Where it is deliberate, doesn't that question the conduct, the ethical disposition of actors of state,
Yeah.
state actors in our own climb, the ethics, the question of the public conscience
Yeah.
to do the right thing?
Sometimes
That is where it comes to the deliberate part is very serious. You design a policy deliberately intended for failure.
yeah. Yeah, well, I'm looking at it from the perspective of sometimes, you know, because of the hangover of the fact that some people think that they know what you need. It's just like, and then they will give you the example that it is like a child. You are supposed to feed the child, and then the child is refusing to take the food, so you still have to force the child to. And the same thing government officials apply to the stakeholders.
Is
They
that
feel
right? Is it right?
That of course that those people don't even know what is right for them. You know, so they will deliberately sidetrack the consultation aspect of it, the stakeholder engagement, which is key, and then they will force it down the throat, you know, of the stakeholders. Sometimes, as I told you, it could be also out of ignorance, but the deliberate aspect of it, as far as I'm concerned, you are setting out for failure.
And it also raises very
Yeah.
serious ethical questions.
Exactly, you are setting out for failure. You know, and sometimes I wonder why somebody should actually set out for failure. Unless you have an interest in the failure aspect of it. Otherwise, I cannot see any reason why a government would want to do a program that would virtually, at the end of it, fail. But of course, some of them do. They don't care, you know.
Let me get your take on this.
Yeah.
Nigeria at the moment is in the middle of a brewing crisis.
Yeah.
A crisis with respect to handling the policy of oil subsidy, or letting it off or letting it be.
Yes.
As a communication expert and looking at the extent to which you can mainstream communication into delivering whichever way the policy goes.
Yeah.
Policy, subsidy to stay,
Yeah.
the subsidy to go.
Yeah.
What is the best approach to deal with this
Very
deep
good.
emerging crisis?
I told you that communication is a process. Are the people aware of what you are doing? Yes, they are aware. Are they knowledgeable about what you want to do? Might not be. Is their attitude right? No. Is their attitude towards it?
Towards
is
the
it-
removal of oil subsidy
for
or
now,
keeping it?
No,
Hmm.
because majority,
Hmm.
you know. And then, are they ready to change? Are they ready to act on it? The people themselves, they are not ready to act. The government is ready to act. This is where the cul-de-sac
Hmm.
is coming from.
Hmm.
Okay, and on the issue of awareness, of course we are aware, and awareness might not be deep.
Hmm.
Why is the awareness, why is the knowledge not actually, why are people not properly educated on the issue of the subsidy itself? Because people are now saying, for years you have been talking about subsidy. When petrol was about 5 naira, you said there was need to remove subsidy. You removed the subsidy. Then you came again and said, no. Petrol is now supposed to be 20 naira. Then you said another subsidy. How many subsidies are we going to be removing? So you have to actually educate people, because people don't now trust you. It's an issue of trust, and strategic communication can address that aspect. Why do people not trust you? Because when it was 5 naira, you said there was subsidy to be removed. Then you increase the cost to 20, to 50, now to 100, and then you are actually thinking of going to about 340, or is it 430? I don't know what they want. So at what point can you stop this one? So you can see there's a level of lack of understanding.
Is it on the part of government or the people?
Well, the issue is that the government
Doesn't
says
understand
it
the
knows.
people,
Yeah,
and the people is
do
not understand why government is doing it.
And the people do not trust the government because they have had the history of not being trusted. Because the government itself has not actually come out to say exactly what is the final bus stop for removal of subsidy.
All right.
So the snack now is the lack of trust and lack of understanding. Yes, so there's no agreement. There must be a meeting point.
To moving forward,
Yes,
as a strategist, communication strategist,
yeah.
what would you advise briefly in terms of mainstreaming communication into development agenda in Nigeria and across Africa?
First of all, I think we have to raise a critical mass of experts in this particular area. Strategic communication is still a new area and still emerging. If you look at in the Department of Mass Communications in Nigeria, I think it was last year that they unbundled, you know, the communication department, mass communication department, and some departments are beginning to introduce strategic communication. Some of us who actually went through, you know, first I went through Department of Theatre Arts because during my own time there was no mass communication. I think we had mass communication only either in Lagos or Nsukka, and then BUK introduced and then step by step. So many people came through different departments into this particular area. some of us actually did self-study
Mm.
in this area of
Strategic
strategic
communication.
communication. And for some of us who are lucky that I was now going into the international
Systems.
institutions, at the time they were introducing development communication. So I found myself as part of that particular group.
Mm.
So I can now say that we are very few. You know, even outside the country. I was surprised to see that there was a study being done by Chatham House in London. And it was just around 2003. They were looking at strategic communication, and even at that time, it was not well defined. So it's still an emerging area, but it is going to be a very, very important area that I suggest that government should take a lot of interest in that and train more people in that particular area, rather than just focusing on public relations or advertising. These are two different, as far as I'm concerned, I see PR as a tool for strategic communication. And even advertising is also like a tool
So
for
to drive
strategic communication.
communication strategically should be
Yes.
an omnibus
Yeah,
engagement
Yes.
of government.
absolutely. It should be. It should be. And then the universities should actually begin to focus on that as a key area if we are to intervene, you know, in the development. And we are to be seen, you know, to be actually playing active part in the design of policies and programs, and also projects, you know, to avoid failures, program failures and policy failures in the country.
Thank you very much. I've been discussing with, in this very exciting conversation on strategic communication, how we can use communication as an interventions tool, and a key component of the tools to be mainstream into the development process of the country. And I've had Mr. Obadiah Tondet, a strategic communication specialist with vast exposure and experience in this field. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
And that's it on Exclusive Interview. Thanks for being with us.
Audio Jungle.